mean, doing anything alone, even life, work, uh, I can't think of raising kids. I mean, single
Mhm.
parents, single dads. I was a single dad for like 5 years, and I could not have gotten through that period if it wasn't for the relationships that I built with my brother and my parents and my friends, even some of the folks that I worked with at the time that helped build me up, helped prop me up,
Yeah.
gave me space when I needed it, and that was very important to me as time went on. Uh, just to kind of pay that back to other folks, knowing
Mhm.
how much I had been helped during that time, and even continually, through getting remarried and my wife adopting my children, become our children. I mean that, and of course, kids as they get older, they don't get any easier. So that
No, they
relationship with
don't.
my spouse is even more important, and even at work. And as I had said, kind of on my LinkedIn post, it's been 25 years now here at Vizient between contract work and regular employee FTE. The one thing that has stayed the same is the need to build relationships, either starting with obviously with the team that you work with, the individuals that you're doing from a day-to-day task, and the projects that you're working on, your manager, and then of course that just grows, to the business units that you work with, the teams that are out that are part of those teams in the same department that you work with. Um, it didn't matter from day to day, year to year, project to project, process to process. If you don't have those relationships, it just makes the work more difficult. I don't think you'll get to where you really want to be, as in, that whole definition of done without having those relationships. I mean, you'll probably get there, but it might be harder. Probably, I'm not saying might, it will be harder to
Yeah.
get there
Yeah.
without those relationships. And I
Yeah.
mean good relationships. You can have bad relationships, and nobody. I like to think nobody wants to have bad relationships, but I'm focusing on good relationships here, with employees and I mean, they're all customers, really. I mean,
Mhm.
you have your internal
Yeah.
customers and you have your external customers, but they're all your customers. Especially, where I'm working currently with, service desk and member support and with laptop deployments, and software support, that, everyone within Vizient is a customer. And if our group, our department could never possibly survive, if we don't try and build relationship and those bridges between the people that we serve and the information that we're providing from a Microsoft Office 365 standpoint to, all the way down to, like, I need to reset my password. I mean, it's probably the most important aspect of your job, is that relationship part. Um, you can be the smartest tool in the shed, but if you're a jerk or you have a hard time working with people, it's going to be hard for me to work with you. To be honest, I mean, you can teach a person to do a job, but sometimes you can't teach a person to be an effective communicator, or to work well with others. It's like, it goes back to a kid. You learn to play well with others. It's one of the things that you're supposed to know right from the beginning. And one of the things that we try and teach folks is to play well with others. And yeah, that goes back to some of the stuff from Scouts, that when I was well, quite a bit younger there, it didn't matter if you're a Cub, first year Boy Scout, got your first Cub badge, or you're a Life Scout about to hit Eagle. If you're camping, if you're doing a pioneering project or setting up camp, everybody had to work together. The roles were not always the same, and their duties were not always the same. But if each individual didn't do their part and work together as a cohesive unit, then a part of it would fall apart. Either you wouldn't eat, or you wouldn't have a place to sleep, or the whole entire aspect of what you're trying to accomplish. If that one part does not succeed, then the whole mess is messed up. The whole camp, the whole project, or I mean, it's like too much. It's like baking a cake. You leave out, the eggs, or something like that. You're gonna. I'm not sure I'd want to eat that cake. I know with baking, my wife bakes a lot, and I know if she, even the baking soda. I mean, it's just a small part of the baking process, but if you leave that little bit out of it, then it's not going to taste very good. And I think that's what relationships are. It's that foundation of everything that we try and do.
It is. Alex, do you want to officially kick us off? And then we'll.
I think we should keep some of this right in the recording. I think
Oh, yeah, we definitely will.
Yeah. So just we kind of dropped you guys right in the middle of the conversation here, but this is Uncover the Human. Welcome back to this episode. We are joined with our guest, Fred Butz, today. Fred Butz is working the service desk and runs the service desk over at Vizient. He's been a client of ours, and we've gotten to work with him for a while here, but let Fred give himself more of an introduction here. Fred, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I'm Fred Butz. I'm Senior Director here at Vizient over our INS customer support. We support Vizient as an organization. We kind of call ourselves the first responders for Vizient, in the sense that we manage the service desk, member support, software support, and client services, which does our AV and our rooms, along with laptop deployments, and really a lot of the first touch activities within Vizient. They're our customers,
and they're great. It's a great team.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic working with Christy and Joseph.
Yes.
Yeah, I could not be happier with them at this time. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a customer of passwords and the usual stuff, I have to say, like, it's top notch service whenever something happens.
That's great to hear. Yeah, we definitely always try to make ourselves available. Some of the folks, I mean, even during COVID, we had employees here supporting Vizient during COVID time. We've folks here that work Monday through Friday here in the office to support our AV in our rooms and our conference rooms, laptop refreshes, client service folks. They're great, and I don't think we could be in the position that we are without the teamwork involved with those individuals.
Yeah. We were just talking a little bit about how the team has to come together as a whole, and you have to have these. And with your role as a service desk, you have a first row view of what it means to help people. And as customers ourselves of that service desk, we know it's not possible without that. But you had just been talking a little bit about, and I was hoping you could expand on a little bit some of that idea of, like, you have to have all the ingredients, you have to have all these pieces, and that really nothing can be done alone, at least not without massive struggle.
No, that's true. You can't, and that's one thing that I've really worked with Christina and Joseph on, is bringing us tighter integration, because there's a lot of work that the service desk does, and there's a lot of work that the client services does, and a lot of that work it crosses each other's path, and so we spent a lot of time integrating those teams and those relationships, both through group activities, through we have a Teams chat, for instance, that we're all part of. So if anything comes up to the service desk, they can, and it might impact client services, they can bounce it off them. We have the Unicom team also now part of that for the M365. So if something comes through, there's an alert or an issue possibly with Microsoft that could impact our employee customers that the service desk may need to know, we can provide that information quickly. And there's an entire kind of culture that's built up around the fact that now client services, service desk, Unicom, that we're all talking to each other. And I think, and without talking to each other, that goes back to, you can't start a relationship unless you talk to somebody. So if you don't, and so, it's kind of the basis of any relationship is talking. And so we've done a lot. We've done a lot of work with Christy and Joseph, and they've helped and put their touches on this as well. That we have, we have monthly meetings and open mics that Joseph has started as well. We could not have done that if everybody also didn't want to have that as well. And I think that's one of the greatest part. It's not a me thing or just a leadership thing. It's also gone all the way down to the individual employee. Everybody wanted to get to know each other. Everybody wanted to build that relationship. And I think we've seen it through the conversations that I've had and some of the conversations that the others have, that I believe it's working really well. I mean, just having people talking to each other has improved our well-being. It's improved our attitudes, improved our morale, and through that talking, the sharing of information. Because that way, I know a lot of things people kind of, especially in the way that we work nowadays with Teams and Zoom and on our cell phone. I mean, that COVID changed everything. It's an easy to feel on the outside, to feel like you don't belong. And I think a lot of that, now that we're starting to come back to the office more so, which is help, but just creating those avenues of interaction that we've done through Teams and meetings and group activities has really, really not only has it improved productivity, but it gives you a feeling of belonging, that you're important, that you matter. And I think that's important no matter what you do in life, be it work or at home. I believe people are built for relationship, and I think it's at least from what I've seen over the last year to 18 months is a tighter integration between everyone, and everyone's enjoying it.
Yeah, I think you touch on very good points and crucial points. I think as humans, we're wired for relationships. We're wired to do things with others. And it's at the core. So like you said, like it wasn't a leadership mandate. Everybody wanted to have the relationship and talk to each other as a thing, because deep down, we all want that. We all want to be doing things with other people, not alone. And somehow, in the evolution of society, we've gotten to this point of like, well, if you can't do it alone, then, you don't know your own value, or you're not strong enough. And I'm like, that's not the point. We're not supposed to be doing it alone. It's always going to be limited.
Yeah. And I think I've read some things, over the last few months that shows that we are the most connected society that's ever existed in the world. It's obviously it's changed dramatically with Twitter and social media, Instagram, but at the same time we're the loneliest generation. People have you have 400 friends on your Facebook, but they're not really. Some might be friends, but it's an interesting. I don't know the answer to it, but it does give me worry a bit in where we're heading, to say that as we gotten more connected, that we've actually become more lonely in our own spaces.
I can't remember whether it was Brene Brown, or it might have been one of our podcast guests. They're talking about, hey, you have 400 Facebook friends, but how many of those people could you ask for a ride to the airport? Like, how many of those people are close enough that you could actually do that? So when we have relationships, we have connections. And that's interesting. You mentioned, like, when you're within work, you've set up like Teams channels and all kinds of spaces for people to have avenues of communication. And there's a lot of places that might have avenues of communication. They'll put together a group channel, but then nobody will contribute. Then nobody will be part of this, and there's not enough space created, or there's something about like the vibe that it doesn't allow for that open communication. We like to talk about there's open door policies, but nobody walks through, and we sometimes call it like the glass door policy, where there's the illusion of transparency, but there's a barrier of some type that people aren't really willing to go through. So I'm curious what elements you see that help make those available avenues of connection used.
Well, I think one of the very first things I did when I accepted the role a little over a year ago was to break down those barriers is to physically meet the people. for instance, we had a team, our member support team actually worked on a completely different floor in a completely different area of the building than the rest of IT at the time. They're down with us now, which is great. But when I went up there and visited them, they said I was probably the first um, leader that they had that had visited them in probably years. And so it made it, I mean, it made a really big impression talking with those individuals just to make that step. And I continue to do so. So I think going back to breaking down the barriers, I think you have to have a physical presence. You need to meet them. Um, if you can, obviously, I mean, if you have remote workers, it's not always easy to do that. I think that's where one-on-ones are very important, and making sure you're doing those on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Turn on your camera so you can see each other.
Yes.
I think that's even more important. I think, I mean, especially with someone who's, may live, 1,500 miles away. It's probably never going to fly into the office. Is to set up some sort of cadence of conversation, and turn the cameras on.
Yeah.
I think for those individuals that really helps. And since my organization, I mean, it's pretty large. There's over 75 individuals within INS customer support once you add contractors to it. I know it's not everyone could do this, but I set up a one-on-ones with everybody once a year so they can see me. I can see them either virtually through, as a Teams call, or here in the office in Irving, in order to maintain that connection. And I always say, no, I do, talking about the open door policy, every time I get done with one of those one-on-ones, I say my Teams chat is always open. So because I know we don't live in the same place, we don't always, see each other, and we may never see each other in the office, but I'm reachable if you need anything at any time. I may not be able to answer immediately. I might be in a meeting or some other processing activity is going on, but I will respond to you. And so I think those and you have to be authentic. I mean, you have to be yourself, be relaxed, be compassionate. Try and understand if they have something that's bothering, understand where they're coming from and the reason that they for some of them, I'm sure it's a brave step just to even walk into the office of someone, that they've either never seen or they rarely talk to, and they don't know how I, as a leader, can perceive them coming in to have a conversation. So I think it's important to provide that level of openness and reassurance that you can do this at any time so people can feel comfortable, because not every conversation is comfortable.
Very true. Yeah, I love the physical piece, either, via video if that's the only way, or at least, coming together in person. As you know, in the LEAP leadership program, that's a big part of, like, we are together in person for 5 days, spread apart, but it's still 5 days. And that's a big piece. It's the energy, it's the understanding, we're in a room, we're together, and we get to connect as humans in a deeper way than if we were all windows in a Teams meeting attending a training.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the LEAP experience, partially for me being the only individual, at least in that LEAP from INS, getting to, and I know some of the names that from the application dev side, Dan Perry but I don't think I'd ever actually physically met them before. And so there's some engagements that we're starting as a result of those connections that we made in LEAP to help bring some of the things that we're doing in member support closer to those BRMs and Agile POs. So we just met yesterday, and we're hoping and we're going to put a pilot together. And so we're hoping that this can, some of the issues that we see on the member side and some of the conversations that they're having, we can bring those member issues closer to that dev team. So we're excited. Christy and I are excited to see where this may go.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear. There's another kind of tally on the side of the importance of relationships where you end up just getting to see people, and that just makes it easier. I mean, these are the things that are harder to measure, but end up being incredibly important. Or just, hey, I now know this person, and oh, right, we do have this problem, and now I can just kind of reach out to them, and it does help to have that in person. So it's really interesting to hear that kind of come into play. I'm curious for you when you started to see this almost more explicitly as an important thing to create all of these relationships and connections and understanding that importance.
Um, I'd probably say it's been probably about 10 years when I moved from an individual contributor role to a manager of a small team. I had already, kind of built relationships through the individual tasks that I had at the time, and with, obviously with the individuals that I worked with, but that just kind of grew when I moved into a new role, and it wasn't really just me then. I'm now responsible for, a whole team of activities, and not only the relationships of that team, but the also involved in the relationships and interactions for those who interface and interact with the team. And so my bubble just, it grew significantly, and over time, would as additional roles and responsibilities came to the team, it just got expanded larger and larger and larger. Um, and during that time, I just kind of grew to understand that the importance, and you see it too, just through the interactions that you'd have, the conversations would change, the way that people would interact with the team would change, because of those past relationship building activities. If a new challenge came up, the way that they would interact with the team would be more positive, or there'd be more flexibility. They'd be more open to suggestions because we had a foundation of a relationship that we had already built from previous engagements, even if it had been months in the past beforehand, and they're just coming to us again. But because of that solid foundation that we had already built, it made those future projects and activities easier to work with.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. One of the things that, as we were talking at the beginning, and you were talking about baking and how you need all the ingredients. I don't bake, and there's very good
No, I don't
reasons why.
either.
And I cook, but I don't bake.
I like cooking. Yeah.
One of my first baking experience was when I came to the US for college, and I just got one of those like brownies in the box kind of things. I'm like, oh, I love brownies. I'll make brownies. And it asked for vegetable oil. And well, growing up in Italy, I'm like, well, olive oil is a vegetable oil. So I put olive oil in there. That's when I learned that maybe baking was not a thing for me. Because even like the baking soda, baking powder, things like, yeah, it's baking something, just
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. But that's part of not only you need all the ingredients, but you need to understand the uniqueness and the value of each exact ingredient in that. And I find that in humans and in teams, it's the same thing. It's like if the person can be their authentic best self, then you're really getting the best value of that person within the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody brings unique experiences, unique backgrounds, different history, different experiences, previous jobs, and that whole mix brings different perspectives, because there's no way that I can, or nor would I even want to try and like, this is the way we're doing this. This is the way we're doing that. Everyone just listen to what I say and do what I tell you. I wouldn't, that things would probably get done, but I can't imagine anybody being happy in that kind of situation. Um, it, and I think, that I don't want that melting pot. We say America, but that unique gifts that everybody brings, their backgrounds, no matter what history they have or race that they are, sex that male, female. It doesn't. They're all going to bring something valuable to that conversation, and where we're trying to go. And I think that is one of our greatest strengths as our team, as of our teams, because our teams that we have is very diverse. And I think that diversity is very important when you're talking about those ingredients, to make a great high performing team or a great high performing organization.
Or a very olive oily brownie.
Yeah, it was not a good taste. It was very
I don't bake
olive oily.
either. Nope.
No, that's a great point. There's so much that we went to this kind of coaching school, Christina and I, and then one of the principles there is that everybody is a student and a teacher, and that's one of the things that I really love about just any mixture of teams and getting to know people on a more personal level, getting to know anybody that you will learn something about yourself, about the other person, about the way life can be lived, should be lived, if you're listening and if you're willing to go dive in and find that authentic person and find what matters to them and just be curious about that and know that it can be different from what your original thought might be, and that might influence your thought on what's important and what can be done next. And when you bring that into the teams and bring that into organizations, that's when you can get this more full picture of what is happening, should happen, could happen. And it's only by allowing people to have that space instead of being like you're talking about, being the person who's like, this is what we're going to do because this is how I said we're going to do it.
Yeah, just that's not going to work. I mean, I guess I can do that to my kids, maybe. This is my house. Some conversation can take place, but you're still going to clean your room.
Yes. It can be a team conversation, but an individual effort.
Right. Job still got to get done.
Yeah.
I don't care what order you clean it in. Still got to get clean.
So you talked a lot about how the creating relationships really elevates all of it, like the performance of the team, but also the happiness and the well-being of people. People are happier because they are having these conversations. Like you said, like it starts with a conversation. Who would have thought? And so where do you see, like, when that's missing, what do you see happens in the workplace or even outside of the workplace?
I see trust break down. Probably is the biggest thing. When folks don't talk, they don't trust, and when trust breaks down, when you have a problem, you don't then engage maybe with the person that can probably solve the problem for you. You try and either do it on yourself, or you go to somebody else that you maybe do trust. Sometimes you'll start getting infighting and backbiting and gossip and people talking disrespectfully behind your back and things. It just cascades from there. But I think trust is the main point you lose. And if you don't trust each other and you don't trust the team, that goes like, then who can you trust? And how are you going to get anything done if you don't trust anyone?
I think that's an excellent point, and it really does come down to trust. And we have somebody in our network told us once, and this has stuck with me for a long time ever since he said it. It was that trust is an outcome. Trust is an outcome of a bunch of choices. You believe you can trust this person because of said interactions with them. They've been trustworthy, and thus there is this imparted trust. And so you lose those relationships, you lose that trust, because I think many businesses can point it. Trust is like, this is important, but you can't just run to your team and be like, trust each other. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, that's something that's built. Yeah, I mean, it's built. A lot of times it's built over time. I do try and trust. I can't say I do it all the time, but I do try to trust from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been hired here for a reason. Obviously, we trust that you have the capabilities. Um, and I think it's important to start at a level of trust too, because if you start at a level of distrust, then you start double checking their work, or maybe going back behind, or you don't fully engage and provide all the information because you're not sure how they're gonna take it. So I think it's important for us to start from a level of trust when you're talking with anyone, new or old.
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's like the book ends. And I think it's almost like it's a different trust, but it's still trust. Like the outcome of trust is known as to the full, almost the full human, their intentions, what they do, their product or outcomes. And at the beginning, you trust the human because that's a much better place to start, and also you have no reason not to, really. And then you start observing what happens. What's that relationship going to build?
Yeah, I think having that intent, it's almost like having just to split hairs on the wording a little bit. It's having that faith up front that like, yeah, I'm going to give you the chance, and then trust is built when the chances are taken well and received well, and you start to see that there is something to trust there, and so you can have that faith up front. And they ran this on a prisoner's dilemma type of experiment where the idea is like there's two prisoners in a different room, and if neither of them rats on the other, they both can get out. But if one tells on the other, then that person has a worse outcome. And or if they both tell each other, they both go to prison or whatever the idea is. That they put like little scores to the outcomes. Like you win, you lose, you get like a higher score for them. And they just simulated this with computers and gave them all different ideas of how to operate in this. And the one that ended up coming out on top with the best outcomes over time was the one that would trust first and just be like, yeah, I'm going to trust that my partner's going to do the right thing. And then if they had a partner that didn't do the right thing, they would remember that partner and not trust them in the future. And that one ended up being like the most like awarded computer. And it's obviously an imperfect match onto all of humanity and its behavior, but it's an interesting thought experiment in having that faith first and then deciding and then figuring out what you learn from the person by first extending that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and sometimes I mean trust can be hard, especially for a new manager or a new employee, especially if an employee has been hurt by a previous manager or a previous employee. If there was trust lost or trust broken amongst the team, that can be a tough thing to overcome. But I think that goes right back to building that relationship, starting by having a conversation, and then I know it's hard and it's brave is to put yourself out there and engage with each other.
It is hard. It's vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage, like you said, sometimes to just walk into somebody's office that you don't know well or you don't know at all. It takes a lot for sure. Yeah. So, well, I'm glad that we've been having a lot of conversations for the last 18
yeah,
months.
No, it's good. Enjoyed them. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. So we do have one question that we ask all our guests. What's your definition of authenticity?
My definition of authenticity. I'm gonna say that is to be your, your true self in an open self. You're open to different perspectives, new ideas, and new ways of doing things but holding true to the things that maybe in your heart that you believe, that you're open to having the conversation to make changes. I mean, I think that goes to show just how much of a authentic person to the other individual, showing that you're open to what they have to say, and you're open to change.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I like the open piece of the authenticity. It's not just showing up, it's just like, how open are you to the people around you and to changing and understanding them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think authenticity is just going in and this is who I am. You're going to take it or leave it. This is what I have. I'm being authentic. If you don't like it, no. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a form of authenticity. I wouldn't say it's the right form of authenticity.
Maybe not the relationship building form of authenticity.
No, we go about doing that, right?
I love that as adding the definition with openness, because it does like a very rigid form of authenticity is I think personally a little unauthentic. Like the idea that you are that unchanging, it would be surprising to find somebody who is so steady and so absolutely resolute in whatever they're saying.
I mean, life is change. I mean, and we have to be open to it.
Yeah, life is change, and we're constantly changing. So whether we're open to it or not, we still are constantly changing.
We are all the way down to the cellular level if we want to get that far. Yeah,
it's true. Very true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Fred. And we know you're involved in a lot of things. So if there's anything you want to plug in and where people can find you at the Renaissance Fairs.
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me, Fred Butz the fourth. I am the fourth Butz.
Yeah, I did notice that on your LinkedIn.
My wife likes to say that it's a very unoriginal family because everyone's named Fred. I can't deny that, but that's the way it is. You're welcome. Yeah, it's open. You're welcome to, reach out or, if you want to have more conversation, I'm happy to talk with anyone here internally to Vizient or outside. And I appreciate the time y'all giving me today.
Yeah,
we appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.